It was like I never heard of Maverick, and then all I heard was Maverick. It was like virtually overnight. So let's talk about this Will Smith thing. That's the last thing that got y'all in hot water.
Oh,
okay.
Let's talk
about it.
If one person within Mav City did it, all of Mav did it, Norman did it, JJ did it, all the executives did it.
I think it's smart that you guys are doing this to basically take back your own narrative, because there's a lot of stuff that gets thrown around about Maverick City rather flippantly.
I don't think that was the intention, and that's sort of why when you said, what was I thinking? I was thinking, why did you say that?
The elephant in the room around Maverick City is race.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mavericks on the Mic. We've got a special episode today. I'm JJ.
I'm EJ.
I'm Norman, and I'm going to throw it to our special guest today.
What's up, guys? My name is Ruslan, and I'm excited to be here with you guys. Thank you for letting me into your home. This is beautiful. We don't got basements in California, so this is like the perfect setup you got here, brother.
Thank you, man. We're excited to have you, brother. Really, really excited to have you.
Yeah, man. Super cool. So, how y'all doing, man?
We're great.
Why are we having this conversation today?
You tell me.
And is it going to come out?
Oh, it's definitely coming out.
We gonna see.
It's definitely coming out. I think we're having the conversation. I mean, you would know as well as us. You know, there's a lot of conversation that has been had that we're not a part of. And we thought it would be really important, especially in this season of I wouldn't call it transition, but we've gone through a season of growth, maturity, some pruning. And so we wanted to sit down and just have a conversation around that. Sit down with somebody that wasn't a part of our camp, not biased, has no whim or wish or regard to what we're doing outside of, we're all serving God. You know what I mean? And so we wanted to have a fruitful but iron sharpened iron conversation, and we thought nobody would be better than you, my guy.
I'm humbled, man. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, first of all, can I just say this? What you guys have been able to accomplish, I'm not saying this as someone that doesn't know, as someone that tried to do what you guys did with music, running a label, and I just tapped out. I was like, creative people, it's like trying to herd cats, yo. They're emotional. They don't know what they really want. They don't understand how business works.
Yeah.
You pour a bunch into them to get them popping, and then when they're popping, they're like, can we change the agreement?
Oh, man.
I think these percentages aren't fair.
Oh, man.
So what you guys have been able to accomplish at this level is phenomenal. So I some of the growing pains I know because I bowed out. I bowed out in 2020 and was like, this is not for me, you know. So props to you guys.
But I think that's a part. It's a part of the brilliance, right, of a creative. You know, I like a good creative who is excellent at their art, cares about the business and respects the business, but really focuses on the art. Because you're right, you got to wrangle them, and they should be in their lane.
Yeah.
I feel like, tell me what you think about this. I feel like the things that make for great art often make for a crappy life.
Yeah, I think great art is kind of maybe frustrates a little bit of what we try to do sometimes on the business side. It's like, it is mysterious. It is it's a song and a dance. It's something that, you know, hey, when's the new music coming out? I don't know. I gotta get in the lab and figure that out. So I think there is a bit of that push and pull that I think artists feel on the other side of the business piece. Yeah,
I'm always just tell us the date. When can we expect it? Let's get going. But it's impossible. But I always say, you know, if you just want to make art, you could do that on the subway in New York. So whenever I meet an artist who says, "Oh, I'm just about the artist," like, well, then we shouldn't have a business conversation. When you go from an artist to a recording artist, you are injecting business and industry and commerce into it, and you have to be able to respect it. You don't have to master it, but you do have to respect that there's a commerce and a commercial aspect to it.
You think that commerce and commercial aspect is why you guys have been able to be successful? It seems like you're kind of handling more of the business strategy side of things, and then you seem to be more on the creative side. And again, I'm learning because you guys got like 7 parent companies and 4 LLCs and this president over here. So I'm learning the infrastructure. It's like one of them cold case files with all the structures and a RICO case or something. So I'm learning. But do you think it's worked because you're on the creative side? You are on the business side. You're stepping in from capital, and you have a lawyer background, which is like, oh my gosh. So y'all got like the dream team to be able to do this stuff. When I was doing King's Dream, a little boutique label I had, Paul Russell, John Keith, John Gibbs, it was just me. And it was just because I had all these creative people around me, and someone had to do the business. And I'm a creative, so I like force myself to do the business. But it seems like the offsetting of responsibilities and the synergy has allowed you guys to flourish. Is that a fair assessment?
I mean, I think that's an amazing assessment. It's a great assessment. I think what JJ and I have been able to really do is he holds me accountable on the business side. I'm able to hold him accountable on the creative music side. And we've both learned so much of each other's world that I can always fall into my core competency. He can fall into his core competency. But neither one of us is lacking the ability to support the other in his actual core competency. And we have a dream team around us: Phil Thornton, Ron Hill, EJ Gaines, Christian Rettle, Lindsay O'Halloran. Like, that's just to name a few within our organization that allow us to be lean but mean. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a trust baked in too. Like Norman would talk a lot about our spheres of influence and like, hey, we all have our lanes, right? Our areas of responsibility, but we are all passionate about the same things. We're all entrepreneurial. We are all focused on the reality that this was a startup, and it really is still a very young company when you look at the life cycle of a company. Momentous success out the gate. And a lot of building the plane midair, and we still are building the plane midair. But I think when you have a team that you trust, that you love, that you rely on, and that you can actually count on in terms of their competencies, we could run through the resumes and be like, yeah, that's actually that person. Like, they really did that. It invites collaboration. It really does invite, like, okay, well, let's, Norman said earlier, iron sharpening iron. Our calls are iron sharpening iron. We don't always agree on a lot of things, actually, but there is strength in that discourse. That's actually how we arrive at the best decision, and we respect one another in that process.
Yeah. I think it's smart that you guys are doing this to basically take back your own narrative, because there's a lot of stuff that gets thrown around about Maverick City rather flippantly. And I have an issue with, I call it people act like Christian nationalism is this big threat to America. I think the bigger threat is Christian nihilism. I think this idea that because something's big, it's bad, right? And so I'm friends with like Dallas Jenkins and The Chosen, and they just get strays and just shots from everybody. I feel like, so you guys get some of that, like, just they're big, therefore it's bad. You talk about startup. So give me a little bit of the backstory, right? You were doing writing camps, 2018.
Yep.
What were you guys doing before this? How was this funded? Because a lot of people would love to build something like this. And outside of just the grievous nature of dealing with creative people, how did y'all fund this, get this off the ground, build this? It seems like I just remember hearing, it was like, I never heard of Maverick, and then all I heard was Maverick. It was like virtually overnight. And Gyra was the first thing I heard, but prior to that, I heard rumblings of like collaborations with Elevation, and I thought I heard collaborations with Bethel. I'm not quite sure. So like, give me a bit of just kind of the backstory. How did you guys get here? How was this funded? Startup, investors, like, what was it?
Yeah, so we started in 2018. Really, this is kind of funny. We were talking about this the other day. We started as a publishing company, which people don't really know that. We weren't an artist. We weren't like a collective. I had some history in the industry as a songwriter. And a lot of my heart around why I wanted to create these camps was because I really felt like there was something missing when it came to diversity in the music industry. And so I was like, man, I know there are writers out there who look like me, who sound like me, who are inspired by Christian music but aren't white. And I want to bring a space where we just collaborate creatively and really
in these writing camps.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you cash flow that? And then two, how did you guys divvy up percentages and what was fair? And because like I've heard of situations where Kanye is giving people publishing because the dude walked in with black jeans on and he puts black jeans on in a song and the guy gets publishing, right? Like everybody gets a piece of the record. How did you guys figure that out? And you don't got to get too specific. But
no, it's great. I mean, so one of the really unique things about us is that we never actually asked for people's publishing at these camps.
Okay.
It was strictly, we wanted the space to feel safe, and we wanted the creators to feel like, hey, I'm walking into something that requires me to be my full self, to bring my full self, but it's not business and it's not transactional. And I think that really created opportunities for songs to go further and for relationships to go deeper than they otherwise would have. Yeah, I mean, we had a partner on the publishing front that helped us fund some of the camps. A lot of the camps, to be very honest with you, are self-funded, you know, self-funded, paying for studios, paying for food, paying for lodging. And so we did that just because we believed in the power of the songs that were being written, obviously hoping that those songs would one day be released and cut either by us or other labels, not realizing that Maverick would become what it is at the time. But yeah, we brought people into this sort of apparatus to just create amazing music, to sort of pitch those music. And like I said, it kind of changed into, what if we release this music? So we very quickly went from publishing focused to, wow, we're the artist.
So in the beginning, they Maverick was partnered with they were partnered from on a publishing standpoint at a point, as he mentioned, with another publishing house. And so at that time, you know, you go in the writing room, it's Nashville way, everybody gets their split. You're there, you get your split. So it was but they weren't asking the artist to get here, you got to sign a publishing deal. It was none of that. That was the differentiation, the antithesis to the industry. So Maverick was really intentional about allowing artists to not be allowing artists non-exclusive right to participate, but not have to sign away their publishing to them.
When you're looking at this from your capital at this point, what are you seeing? Because
Chaos.
you're at a
Chaos.
you're at a major
and
label.
Mayhem. Yeah, no, chaos and mayhem, and we talked about this a lot. You know, it was so, to Norman's point, antithetical to the industry. I mean, there are rules. You know, there is a way. My undergrad degree is from NYU in the music business. It's a 4-year degree on exactly what to do. And these jokers were doing everything opposite. Everything was backwards. Everything. The idea of a writing camp where you're coming in and we don't really know. And JJ will say it all the time, even now, you know, we just want to hang. No, what's the terms of the hang? How long is the hang going to be? What's the percentage? That's where my mind goes as an attorney and as a business guy who was really ingratiated and ingrained into this space of, yeah, there's a way to do this, and they swam upstream, and then were historically successful. And so what it proves is there's not only one way. There's a way that's worked. Sometimes that way has also gotten diminishing returns. And a lot of the industry will talk about that, and they put it in the trades and say, yeah, it's tough times. Meanwhile, this ragtag group of like, we didn't know, we just kind of put it together. Now there's thoughtfulness, there's some strategy to it, you know, there are things that absolutely do work, there are business models that are put in place, but at the core of it, it's still just a hang. It's still relational. A lot of our decisions are sent via text or sent through a messaging. Like we're just hitting each other about ideas, but they're big ideas and they're big decisions. We don't get into a boardroom and whiteboard everything. It's a conversation, and we can make the decision fairly quickly.
So are you guys now getting some hate from being so antithetical to the machine, to the system? And now Nashville is taking notice, LA is taking notice, and are people, is there apprehension, is there tension in all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot comes into play with that, though. You know, I think the elephant in the room around Maverick City is race. When you look at the powers that be in Christian music and the cultural difference between, it's not only, it's one thing that we were disruptive. It's one thing that we did things differently. Yeah. It's one thing that we didn't dot every I and cross every T. That's one thing. Then you have this aspect of there was a clear divide between Christian and gospel, that we literally took the line and we did it like this, to where Maverick City puts a song out. What is it? Is it a gospel song? Is it a Christian? Is it a worship song? Is it a CCM song? What format does it belong to? And then you begin to see this warming up to this diversity, because you could have on the song, which was just not common. You could have a white and black guy singing on the song, or white girl and black girl. You could have, it was whatever. And that in and of itself wasn't common. Mm-hmm. If you go back pre-Maverick City and look at how many, I call it interracial collaborations that took place the 20 years prior, you're going to have, in the solo year that Maverick came out and began to release music, you probably had more collabs in that year than you had the 20 years prior between people of different race, ethnicity, and background. Wow. And that in and of itself, beyond the business practices, that was the unsaid, unspoken thing that made people take a seat back and say, just because of a preferential place, the way certain, you can have two people leading a song that worship differently. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You can have two people leading a song that have, with Maverick, that have different denominational backgrounds. Mm-hmm. You can have two. Maverick is the one who they go to different churches. Mm-hmm. They didn't grow up as friends. They didn't grow up in the same community. They didn't grow up with the same socioeconomic background or understanding or even relationship. One just got saved 2 weeks ago. The other one's been saved since they were born on the communion table, basically. And so Maverick had this unique community of people from everywhere, from all backgrounds, all walks of life, all different understanding, different political aspirations. It was totally, totally different. So you can have a group. It's why it's interesting. We'd have, if a member, because people called anyone who'd ever participated in anything a member of Maverick
last row of the choir.
You know what I mean? Anybody. So a lot of the confusion around us is that there is no group, I would say, in Christian and gospel or mainstream, where they are so diverse. Mm-hmm. They're so from totally different walks of life. And in our space where what they believe is so important to what they do. Mm-hmm. And so because of that solo feature, because of that single feature, most worship groups are churches. And a part of the power in the movement was Maverick was what it needed to be for who it needed to be for. Mm-hmm. It didn't fit in a box. And that in and of itself as well makes people uncomfortable. Mm-hmm.
I was going to say there was a time, and remember, we talked about Gyra and some of that season. That's 2020. I mean, a very contentious time in our nation, right? Very polarizing, very, everyone's picking a side. And so Gyra and this diverse group and this power dynamic is happening within the context of a broader power dynamic and a broader shift. So it was really just the perfect storm, honestly. But I also think that, and this has happened over the course of my career. I've been in Christian music and gospel music for 2 decades. There's always a moment in society where a white artist and a black artist want to do something together, right? They want to have a We Are the World kind of moment. Oh, it would be great to. And I remember there was a day where someone who represented a CCM artist approached me and said, "Hey, can we get this gospel artist to do a song?" And I said, "Why don't they go to dinner first?" "No, they don't want to do that. They just want to do a song." You should eat first. Because it's enough songs. Like, we've done enough songs together. Like, do you actually want to sit down and eat and do life with me? And then we'll do a song as an outgrowth of that. That never happened. That song never happened. Because a lot of people don't actually want to do what Norman and JJ said they did. They did life together. You took people from diverse backgrounds, diverse experience, diverse denominations, diverse lengths of time walking with Christ, and they just wrote together. And then they would have dinner that night together, and they lived together, and they learned about each other's families, and then they made a song. Yep. The industry wants to go into the studio this week. Who was shot? Let's go cut a song about it. No. Let's go eat and talk and cry and mourn and grieve and lament. And then if God gives us a song from that, then let's use that as a tool to heal. But the industry was not designed to do that en masse. You have to have a writing camp or a community that cares about community first. And I think historically, a lot of people, I worship more to a Hammond B3 organ than I ever will to a guitar. But I have chosen communities of faith where guitar is the prevalent instrument. I don't know, and it saddens me often. I know now that I'm in a place, I think, where they would, but I don't think that I've typically been in an environment where my white counterparts would choose a Hammond B3 just for the sake of community.
Yeah, I grew up in San Diego, a very different San Diego in the 90s, City Heights area. So the very first time outside of my Armenian Orthodox understanding, which was very different, that someone shared the gospel with me was from the Black Baptist church experience. There's a lady in my complex who was involved in a life and in an attempt to move weight through an airport. I don't know why she was moving weight through an airport, but she was. Got arrested, went to prison, got saved in prison.
Wow.
Came out, and our whole complex got saved, except the 2 Armenian families. So everyone in my complex is saved. And this is at the peak of Evander Holyfield and Tyson and all that. And Fred Hammond, like I'm getting exposed to that, like that black gospel music, Kirk, that whole, the Winans, like that thing. And then I don't become a Christian, but I'm like, there's something to this style of music that just speaks to me. And I'm so friendly with this lady. Her name is Cherie. She's amazing. Love the Lord, shared the Lord with me when I was getting arrested, the whole bit. And there was a patience there of like, you're going to do great things for the Lord someday. And I was like, you're crazy. Like, there is no God.
Yeah.
And fast forward, now I started going to a church in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And there's none of that.
There's no Fred Hammond.
Yeah, where's Fred? Like, where's this? We'd get the choir, but the choir would almost be very like, very clean 3-part harmonies, very safe, or if anyone had any soul, they'd turn them down in the mix, And I relate to what you're saying because that's my preference is that. Like, if I just had Fred Hammond for the rest of my life, I'm good.
I had this moment in my own personal life when I was a kid. The first 11 years of my life, I went to an all-black church. And then when I was 12 or 13, the family switched and we started going to predominantly white churches. So I grew up knowing like all these, black gospel standards and then now having to learn. Oh, and during that transition, I started to learn music. That was a big. So I've got all these like songs that I know that I've heard my entire life. And now I'm like hearing and learning what like Mercy Me and like Chris Tomlin is. And so for me, I think even in my own journey, just musically, I've always seen the ways in which they've worked together and that they've fit. And I think that's one of the things I love about Mav is that there is a blending. There's space for everyone here to really enjoy themselves. And you see that in the way the people that show up to the shows, the people that comment on Instagram, the people that are touched by the music, you feel that blending. And I think we're better for it. I mean, it's kingdom, right? Like it is literally kingdom that we can all come together and figure out as believers how to worship God in a way that honors our personal identities, our preferences, but also like just to worship him together. So, yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Okay. When did the faces that we know from Maverick kind of materialize? When did we start knowing kind of like who are because you're saying collective, we just getting together, we're writing, and a lot of those records, and I do not mean this in a disrespectful way. My favorite Maverick records are the ones that aren't mixed well. Like, and I say that with all respect. Like, I like the raw, because
where the room mic is hotter than the lead vocal.
Because I would get
on purpose too.
I'd get around musicians, and you know what they would run into is the perfection complex.
Yep.
And it's like, matter of fact, I'm going to give him a shout out, and I'm sure you guys may or may not be familiar with this gentleman, Calvin Noel, right?
Yeah.
Great brother of mine, known him for well over a decade.
Yeah.
Calvin is going mega viral right now on YouTube, on Instagram, refuses to take those recordings and put them on Spotify so someone else did it for him. And I'm like, bro, put the music out. Well, it's not mixed right. I don't care. Like, I want to listen to it on Spotify.
Absolutely.
There's people that want to listen to it on Spotify. And so me and him, literally every time I see him, we have this argument. And my favorite Maverick records are the ones that aren't mixed well. Like, they're just... There's just something there, Man of Your Word. I can't listen to Man of Your Word without crying. And then I'm also connected to KJ. So I think there's something to that of like, let's just go and release it. And if we got to cut a radio version, we'll cut a radio version. If we got to rearrange it, we'll rearrange it. But I think that's it to me. Like, especially in a content age where it sounds like you having a media company probably saw some of where everything was going towards visuals, right?
Speed.
And capitalized on that.
Absolutely.
Speed was definitely built into our core business value, right?
Yeah.
Like the speed at which we go from the writing room to the studio till it being released. And I think, especially in an age where we kind of came on the scene, you got the pandemic, well, we need content. Like everyone's screaming, I need content. What am I gonna do? I'm in my house, whether it's a Netflix show, whether it's content from my favorite worship artist, like I need content. Well, we had content like backed up. So we just were dropping the content. And what I think it inspired in people was like, man, I'm isolated, I'm disconnected from the world, but here's this beautiful picture of people who kind of look like they're in the living room, like the one I'm sitting in right now that I can't leave because there's a pandemic, and they're worshiping, and I can participate in that. And so there's something that kind of like, it's almost like those moments that we were able to share with the world transcended the moment that we were all collectively in.
How much of that was intentional? I don't mean to cut you off. How much of that was intentional? The living room, the rawness of it. I want to say some of it was in black and white. You know, like how much of that was calculated and how much of that was just gut?
It was very intentional. It was extremely intentional. I think we always wanted to highlight two things. We wanted to highlight the voice. So one of the things, that's kind of what you were saying. One of the things that I want to always feel when I watch a video, when I'm listening to a mix, is I want to feel like I'm there. Right, and so one of the reasons why I even did recorded in the settings that we did was we wanted people to watch and to participate like they were in the room. Like, how do I get to that room? How do I get to where they're recording? That was sort of the feeling that we wanted to. We also wanted to highlight songs, and so we didn't want big mixes with tons of loud music, which there's space for that, and I love that, and I'm not against that, but we wanted to highlight the music, the songs, what we were saying. And so there's something about being able to do it in a small setting where you feel like you're in the room, the songs are being highlighted. It kind of, it's almost, like I was saying earlier, it kind of transcends. It's like, man, this feels like I need to be here. This feels like this is a really cool part. People that we hadn't even met when we did our first tour, Welcome to Cement, I feel like I'm in Maverick City. You know, there's something that was transcendent with what we were doing. And I think those decisions to do it, to record it the way we did, to mix it the way we did, was very intentional because we wanted to foster those feelings when people engage with the music.
That's fire.
Yeah, you kind of hit on, like, how did we know the faces? How do we know who? How did we learn these faces become? I would say through touring and success of song. So
You just take the whole group on tour.
No, twofold. So as you're making decisions to go on tour, right, you can't take a 30, 40-person writing camp, right?
Well, let me back you up, too, because I also would say, like, as we grew, I think one of the things we always felt was, like, this undefined, nebulous kind of thing, it feels almost inappropriate as we begin to grow, right? There needs to be some definition of who's a part, who's in, who's caring. And I think we're really, where the rubber really met the road was when we decided, like, that we were going to do our first tour, which is what he was saying.
Was that tour with Lecrae? Was that first tour?
Lecrae, yeah.
I remember that. And y'all had was that when you guys had the Circle stage?
We had a Circle B stage, yes.
A Circle B stage. I remember seeing footage of that and thinking that is so cool that it wasn't like a, so
Welcome to Maverick City.
Yeah. So you guys go on tour, and that's when you start figuring out who is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So once you start to go on tour, you actually have to do deals, you have to do tour deals, and so forth and so on. So that's when, now you have success. Now you have something. Now there's real revenue coming in. And once you hit tour, and at this point you have enough catalog to where you're seeing, all right, these are the people coming who don't have deals, who don't have publishing deals, who don't have any attachment to anywhere, right? And so you begin to highlight and spotlight the people that are consistently showing up, consistently giving input. And around once we decided to do the tour, that's a story in and of itself. But once we decided to do the tour, I believe that first tour it basically told the world, this is Maverick City. And so the people that they saw on the tour and in that content and on the road, and not coincidentally, those are the same people who had at that point the songs that were singing the songs that you would consider the lifeblood of Maverick City, Promises, Man of Your Word, Gyra, Wait on You, Talking to Jesus, those type. At that point in time, this is right after the release of Old Church Basement, it was a coalescing of, all right, this is Maverick City. So we named it to a Welcome to Maverick City. So I believe that that's how those people became to be known as who Maverick City is. In and of itself, also, he talked about it. They purposely invited people who were unknown. And so it's one thing you do, this is a move with Tasha Cobbs. Well, Tasha Cobb has her own brand, and she's already won a Grammy. Travis Green, they already have. These artists are only known to the public at this point in time based upon their participation in Maverick City. So what else would you correlate them to, essentially? Like any other feature, like Chris Brown from Elevation was on the Volume 3, Part 2. No one considered him a part of Maverick City. Or Brie Babineau. Nobody considered her a part of Maverick City because they already had notoriety to a point. But the other artists were, they had some, but this was clearly their breaking moment.
And I don't mean to get too businessy, but this is just how my brain works. So then are y'all going back and saying, all right, now we need to get some paperwork with some of these artists?
Ironically, no.
No.
No, no.
Hold on.
No.
Hold on.
I'm cringing
So
even
the
now.
only thing that Maverick is controlling at this point is just the upload to DistroKid or TuneCore of these projects.
By the point we're going to tour, we have a distro deal.
You got distro, and then who is that with? Orchard. Okay.
We had so like you would say, for the ones that were showing up consistently camps, that were writing a lot of the songs, we had come to them and said, hey, like maybe there's some sort of partnership that we could sort of figure out on the publishing side. But that was only a handful of guys that we decided to do that with. And even then, their artist stuff we weren't even interested in touching. So this was something that I think, and I'm gonna be very honest, it was always sort of an ongoing conversation, and it was a tension you could feel. And not from our side, but just in the sense of like,
the industry standard.
Yeah, it's almost like people look back at us and goes, well, now what's the catch? And for us, it's like, well, no, like there really is no catch. Like this started here, it's grown to here, and we're going there. Like, and we're really just trying to figure out what is best for everybody.
That's dope. So, okay, at one point, do you guys present agreements to the artist?
Got it. I mean, that becomes a point where.
And who is officially signed to Tribl?
You're going to get it all from me.
He going.
You're going to get
All
it
right.
all from me. So
this conversation is way more. I'm just genuinely interested in this stuff at this
there
point.
becomes a point where the industry itself creates expectation whether you want it or not.
Okay.
Right? So when you have the number one song in the genre is Gyra, and no artist that sings the song has a record deal, I mean, no writer on the song has a publishing deal, I mean, that in and of itself creates demand, right?
Sure.
And so by this point, I'm a part of things. And I've done, at this point, I had done a ton of deals with artists. I had done deals with basically every label at that point. So we're coming together and saying, okay, we have this model. However, the artists, they're making revenue, they're making money. They have no attachment, but of course, there's advances tied to signing record deals. These people want to buy houses. They want to have, they want to start families. They want to buy a car. They want, some front end on that success. And so after around, and to be completely transparent, there were some publishing deals in the works already there. And a couple of the artists had done deals at another label. That they had artist deals, like Dante and Brandon had artist deals at another label at the time. And so,
which we weren't participating.
Yeah, we weren't. Yeah. I said they had deals. They didn't have deals with us. They had deals outside of us, and they had publishing deals that we did participate in. But as we're going and as we're moving, after Old Church Basement, after tour, it becomes a time of, okay, not everybody's after them. Their first show ever was a sold-out show in Sacramento. I mean, they never even played a show together. Now they're in front of 9,000 people walking on stage. It's not heard of. That's unheard of for a mainstream band. Yeah. But for your first show to be an arena show, the first 3 shows were arena shows, and then you sell out Anaheim Amphitheater. I think it's Hollywood Amphitheater. It's 12,000 people. So you go from a living room to in front of an arena full of people. At this point, they even recognize, oh my God, this is way bigger than we thought. And so at this point, now you're sitting down trying to discern, all right, what does it mean to be in Maverick City? What is Maverick City? Is Maverick City going to be a label? Do we create a label outside of that? And that's where you have the genesis of Tribl. And you have the creation of the actual label. Allow Maverick City to be the artist and the publisher because its foundation is in songwriting. And because by all means we're going to sign artists due to the success of this that aren't a part of Maverick City, you need a label infrastructure that isn't attached to the artist brand because, you know, an artist can end up doing anything. So an artist signed to Maverick City did XYZ. Well, you would rather not stain the brand with that. You'd rather have an external entity, Tribl, take on the brunt of, okay, we got this artist signed to Tribl, and XYZ may have taken place. And so that's when you had Tribl. So now we're 2021. We're talking to art. We're talking to all of the members of Maverick, trying to see what the deals are and what things are. And just transparently, because of how it happened, because of, this is what I believe. This is Norman's words and Norman's only. I believe because of how Maverick was created in the beginning, the altruism, the amount of non-traditional methods of doing business. Imagine, I was getting a 25% royalty for free. I didn't have to do nothing. You know, but sing a song. You can't, if you signed an artist deal at that time, anywhere, you couldn't get above 12.5 to 15.
12.5, yeah.
And
I've seen the deal memos, bro.
and that's what
It's
you
in his
signing.
back.
That's what you signing to do.
That's crazy.
4 to 5 albums.
Yep.
With maybe an artist fund of, you know, 50 to 85,000. That's on the high end. And trust me, I had a 5-time Grammy winner that I was with. I mean, not winner, 5-time Grammy nominee that I was working with. And so I knew the deals. And so I say all of that to say it's like, it's kind of like a kid, right? You got a kid, you've given them everything they've ever wanted. Normal to them, they don't judge it against the status quo. They don't judge it against the industry standard. They judge it against what you've been to them.
Precedent.
They judge it against that precedent. And so when the precedent is so and such the antithesis of normal, how do you, like, what more could we do?
Yeah.
Give them the song. I mean, basically, the only other thing you could do is, we weren't, like, even our deal structures, we present deal structures, they're better than that. I know it for a fact. The deal structures we present today at Tribl, they're some of the best in the industry.
What I love about what you're saying is this theme of being the opposite of what industry standard is, right? Sure. And we operate in an upside down kingdom, right? The last shall be first, the first shall be last, right? And Jesus kind of shares this all throughout Matthew, you know, the Beatitudes and this whole theme. And I love everything about that. Now, having said that, there's a tension here with, this is worship music. This is how people are getting through their day. This is how people are getting through that graveyard shift, right? And there's a sacredness to it. There's a purity to it. On the flip side, there's a commerce side, and everything you've shared to me about the commerce side, I personally can go yes and amen. I love everything about your guys' heart with that. The flip side to that is we're also now dealing with younger creatives who are perhaps coming from, some of them may have backgrounds and traumas and aren't the most mature, perhaps not the most accountable. How do you guys manage that tension? And there's, you know, we can go through the controversies, but where do you guys find that balance of like what may make sense for Tribl and what may make sense for Mav City may not make sense for this dude who loves Jesus, but like he can't stop smashing his girlfriend. That's right. You know, he may love Jesus, but like he's out here doing some wild stuff on the weekends, or he might have a little secret pill habit, or fill in the blank. And I'm not saying, this is not me saying as I know any of these things. I'm just saying that I know creative people, and I know young people, and I know young people early in their walk. And so how do you guys balance? Because the world is seeing these people as worship leaders. They're seeing them as worship pastors. And so a lot of what I've had to do, and I'm not sure how much of you guys have kept up, like when Chandler had the girl, his wife, twerking on him at his wedding, I had to be like, yo, that's not your worship pastor. Like, give him a break. He's 26, 27. Like, relax. he's figuring this out. But people are like, but why are they leading worship? Why are they right? And so they're seeing them as they need to be sound doctrine. They need to be that. And so how do you guys manage that? Because that's a real
really good
tension.
question. I think this is a part of the conversation that makes me so glad that we're doing this, is because one of the things that I will say about Maverick is what we perceive Maverick to be and what people then perceive it to be when they consume it, when they're interacting with it, could be two totally different things. So I think for us, like, one of the things we just were like immediately as we started to do the tours and the albums and all the success, it was like we had to come around and say, hey, we've never really done this before, but like it's inappropriate for us to not have a sort of like guidelines and expectations for each other. Like, hey, what do you expect of me if you show up to a tour? And then like, what should I expect of you, right? And so is there a code of conduct? Are there check-ins that we want to have with your pastoral team? Like all the things that like, and I think for us, like, again, starting in a living room, starting with the expression where you're inviting people, it's like, we weren't thinking about that. But as it sort of grows out and it becomes more popular and there's influence and things mean things that are important, I think we had to sort of like try to make as much of an expectation as we possibly could internally. And that for us started with conversations like, hey, if you want to be a part of this, this is what being a part looks like.
And what does that look like? What were those conversations?
Well, I mean, there's codes of conduct, there's expectations morally, there's expectations for their participation. I mean, at the time we even had we had a nonprofit that we wanted them to be a part of a couple times a year. So there were like legit like, hey, being a part of Maverick isn't just jumping on a stage and featuring on an album. It's these things. And it was a list of, it was, how many pages was it? 3 or 4 pages of
So you guys try to formalize this.
Sure.
From the outside, it could look like this. There is a sect within Christianity that I think is unhealthy, and it's this like hyper grace. As long as I just say the name of Jesus and ask for a quick repentance prayer, how I live doesn't matter. What I do behind the scenes doesn't matter, and the type of person I am doesn't matter. But I just throw up a quick prayer, God forget. All along, somebody could be living in flat out rebellion and lawlessness, and then be positioned as a leader in the Christian world. And I've seen this behind the scenes. Like, I went to a Spotify Christian mixer, not to cut you off, and then I met folks there. This is prior to Mavericks, like 2016, 2017, that had full on deconverted and that weren't walking with Jesus no more. That were like, well, there's a bag in CCLI, so I'm gonna keep writing these Christian songs. And I was like, that is wicked. Like you're just getting a check, And I'm sitting there, I'm watching people get drunk. I'm watching people hook up. I'm seeing this, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like, this is insane, right? So there is a component of a hyper grace theology where, hey, you can live how you want, and as long as you say you sprinkle a little Jesus on it, like God's good with you, God's and I think that's dangerous. And I think what happens is people are then looking at everything through that skeptical lens. And then we go back to the idea of Christian nihilism, and because it's big, it's bad. So they're big because they have to have compromise. And look at this person. His wife took a photo twerking on him at their wedding, and then everything gets filtered through that cynical lens, So go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, I think this is an amazing, this question, this conversation right here is amazing to me for a number of reasons. I think if we've tracked through the conversation so far, we've tracked through the level of commitment in the beginning that we required of the artists. So what we have to go back to is in the beginning. Each of these artists had their own pastor. They were going to their own churches. They had their own communities, all of that, right? And so I think that the intention of the beginning of Maverick wasn't to be an artist. It was to be a publisher. And so what you see born out of that is this. At no point in the beginning could you sit JJ sitting around thinking, hey man, when Maverick releases music, people are gonna see these guys as worship pastors or the next generation of worship pastors. To them in that time period, we're putting out music to uplift and glorify God. Right?
It's just that simple.
It's just that simple. What Maverick did in its essence was bring together people that were already existing in life, already doing their thing, already at churches or not at churches. And as much relationship as you can build in a writing camp, you can build. But frankly, it would be very difficult for us to discern. It's like asking EJ working at Capitol, hey, man, the guy working next to you, what are his vices, man? You working with him every day. You going to the office with him every day. Like, what is he dealing? That's it. Think to anybody watching this. The person working next to you at work today, you work with him every single day, all day. Y'all spend more time together than you spend with your family. What are they dealing with? What are they going through? And there's a level of transparency and authenticity necessary in the person, in the art, in the executive, and whoever that must take place. We can put all the code of conducts, we can put in all the rules, all the regulations. The reality is we didn't go on tour. We didn't know everything, right? None of us at that point. All of these guys live in different cities. They have. We know what they tell us or what we hear through the grapevine, and we question it. If they say no, we have no. Much as any rumor to you is as much a rumor to us, right? And if I don't even really have, because we don't got no contracts, what am I? He's my employee. What am I? It's a person that I'm collaborating with. I'll keep sitting up. It's a person I'm getting excited. It's a person I'm collaborating with at the time, and my responsibility is to take them at face value on what they're saying. Do I deep dive into, go get a private investigator to find out if it's true? I guess that's the question. Where is the level of what level of responsibility is necessary from a label?
Maverick City and Tribl was saying, hey, you should be connected to your local church.
Absolutely.
You should be submitted to a pastor.
Absolutely.
You shouldn't be smoking weed.
I wouldn't extend it to Tribl. I just like clarity. Sure. I like clarity. I'm really big on clarity. Really big on clarity. No, we do not have a code of conduct for artists signed to
Tribl.
This is for
for
Maverick
being
City. For being a part
City.
of. And what this is the ironic part. It was what we called our artist agreement. And it had no music contractual term in it.
Interesting.
It was literally all conduct, expectations that we had of the artists, and then things that they could expect back from us.
For us to prove that they were doing any of these things, it would prove very difficult.
Sure.
Because we don't live together.
Sure.
We're not going to church together. We don't, you know what I mean? We don't even live in the same cities. And so a lot of the times, as we're saying, if it was a rumor, it's a rumor to them. It was a rumor to the public. It was a rumor to us until, something happens that we actually see.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to talk about rumors, but we do got to address the Dante situation. And what I'm not going to do is talk about rumors about any of this stuff.
Okay.
I want to talk about stuff that's documented.
Yeah.
So people first started seeing red flags, yellow flags. The thing that I remember hearing murmurings about is like Dante Bowe said that he likes Lil Nas X and he wants to see Lil Nas X perform. And then Maverick City catches all the backlash for it. And so what were you guys thinking throughout that entire deal? Was he trolling? Was he intentionally trying to poke?
What were we thinking?
Yeah. And what were y'all thinking about that?
Wait, can I say this before you answer?
Sure.
Two things that are important to identify. One, we love Dante. He's our brother. And I want to make that clear, not previously, today. Right now, we are in relationship with him. We love him. But two, and this goes to what Norman was saying earlier, if one person within Mav City did it, all of Mav did it, Norman did it, JJ did it, all the executives did it. And I used to say, the outside sees everybody as one unit. They don't distinguish between Tribl, Mav City, the executives, and the individual singers.
Well, I remember the headline from that was Maverick City artist says, or I think it was even Maverick City says they're excited to see Lil Nas X, right? I mean, that's what came out of.
And Mav City can't speak.
It's not
The further interesting part of that is Dante was signed to a completely different label at the time. He was nominated on his own for 3 Grammys. That's why he was there.
So he wasn't there representing Maverick City.
He wasn't even, transparently, he wasn't even there with us. He was there as Dante Bowe, nominated for, he had just released his own solo album, Joyful. He was there as Dante Bowe. He was walking the red carpet as Dante Bowe. Maverick walked the carpet. He didn't walk with us. Not saying he was at that time apart from us. But again, Dante has never to this day had a deal with Maverick City aside from a publishing deal. I've known Dante well before he was in Maverick City. And so I think when you ask us what did we think about Dante saying, he was excited to see Lil Nas X, Dante's excited to see Lil Nas X. I mean, that's what we thought about. Now, transparently, if you go through things and you look at our catalog since then, he hadn't featured on anything, right? The last thing he featured on was Kingdom. And so at this point in time, Dante is preparing to go off and do his solo career, which we supported. And so we internally know this. So to us, it's nothing to talk about. How the public then internalizes and takes it but we had no grounds to do anything to him. He ain't signed to us. We don't have any, at that point, we didn't have any deal with him, I don't believe. And so there was no, we issue a statement saying we're not excited to see Lil Nas X. I'm not trying to be tongue in cheek. It's just that it's like, one, that's our friend. That's our brother. He said something that we probably wouldn't have said. I probably would have. Maybe somebody else in Maverick was also excited to see Lil Nas X because, as I mentioned, everyone is different in the group. There's not this unifying factor to us besides for our faith and our belief in God. That was the unifying factor and the willingness to write and get in the writing room and write together. Outside of that, he's a supremely artistic dude. He's really hard work. He's a studio rat, loves the art and Norman probably wouldn't have said I was excited to see Lil Nas X.
But I do think that there's a piece of this, like if you're an employee of a corporation, a lot of times on social media, you'll see in their bio, the last sentence always says, views are my own. Views are my own. And I do think that within Christendom, and especially within the worship community, there is not grace for views of my own. And I think, you kind of hit on that before. It's like, well, people think that if he said it and he's a worship leader and he's leading the church, then he shouldn't be saying things like that. People can disagree as to whether they want to see Lil Nas X. People, they want to see the song, they want to see the creativity, they want to see the whatever, or do they want to see the horrible debauchery of it? And I think whatever he said, views are his own, not Mav City, not JJ, not Norman, and I think there probably wasn't enough grace for that to be the case.
Towards Maverick City.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, no, you go.
I think the concern goes back to a worldview issue, right? That I think a lot of what we're dealing with and have been dealing with is within certain Christian circles is syncretism, where you're trying to take incompatible worldviews and squish them together. Yeah. If he had said, "Hey, I'm excited to see," who's the guy Kanye brought out? Marilyn Manson. Like Kanye, rightfully so, got backlash for bringing out Marilyn Manson. And so I think there's a concern there of when we're looking at it, and then some people do have this again, the hyper grace. Do what you want. Your life doesn't matter. Just sprinkle a little Jesus on it. Now we're talking about Lil Nas X and bigging up Lil Nas X. There is a room for people to be like, wait a minute, like
I'll say this. Because I think because we all know Dante, we kind of know the angle from which that comment came from.
Yeah.
And I'll say it this way. Dante is about as big of a music student as there is. From Lauryn Hill to Kirk Franklin to, you name it. He just studies music. And I think that comment probably came from the creativity, the sound, the music. I'm intrigued, and it probably wasn't thought through to the level of, wow, now is this guy antithetical to everything that I've spent the last 3 years getting on stages singing about? I don't think that was the intention, and that's sort of why when you said, what was I thinking? I was thinking, why did you say that? Just being honest, I was like, why did he say that? But I do know his heart. I can confidently tell you, like, just knowing him, knowing the type of artist that he is, like, I think it was more from the music's cool, the performance is set to be cool. I'm intrigued, but I don't know that he's like linearly thought out through every decision that Lil Nas X had made through the past year and gone, wow, now I'm really intrigued because I want to see how he does this thing that's going to offend the Christian. I don't think it was that thought
I wouldn't even
through.
say I don't think. We know it was.
Yeah. And so I think that's to where that's a little bit of like, I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's like, probably shouldn't have said it. Probably should have been more careful about what he said. But also there's a little bit of like, I wish that when people saw that, they maybe had a little bit more grace for, hey man, he's just a kid who loves music, who's excited to be at the Grammys. He just got nominated. He's caught up in the moment. Lil Nas X had actually just walked by and waved at us. That was probably even some of the reasoning there. I mean, so it's just like you gotta, and again, people aren't always gracious in the way that they, retell things or even see things. So I understand that. But yeah, that would be the context that I would probably start with.
That makes sense.
for
And again,
Dante.
I'm just pointing back to like people still are looking at him as their worship pastor.
Yeah, for sure.
Which may or may not be fair to him. That may not be what he signed up for.
But it was what it was.
Yeah,
I
it
mean, I
was
think
what it
that's
was.
the reality is that, for all of the, wow, we just kind of stumbled into this historic worldwide, success. There does come, to whom much is given, much is required. There is a responsibility.
Absolutely.
And even if you didn't know that you were responsible, let this be noticed that you are responsible. Sometimes people will say things on Instagram or social media and you realize how far it spreads. And maybe you didn't know, but now you do know. And so, I think even the code of conduct is a response that says, okay, we've been running. We've been building this in midair. We have been just saying yes to this, showing up to this, just making sure that the music was doing what it does. And now we realize we need this. And I think, and this is someone from the outside who's coming more recently into the organization, the things that I used to think were malicious or negligent or irresponsible were not that in every instance.
Sure.
Often it was, oh man, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. And there are more of those than I could actually list. There's more like, oh, okay, well, what should we do? And in a very innocent, like, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. It's almost like in the New Testament when they say, did you guys get baptized? We didn't even know we were supposed to be baptized. It wasn't like they're bucking against baptism. It wasn't that. They just didn't know.
Yeah.
As innocently as the writing camps were, he wasn't a business guy. He wasn't a Titan publishing, giant. He was just a guy who really wanted some songs that sounded like a blend between his, 0 to 12 and his 12 to 18, and he couldn't find any within the body of Christendom.
That's good.
So he made it. And sorry, he didn't know how to do that perfectly.
Sure.
Sorry it wasn't buttoned up.
I think that's one thing that this is going to help do and help people to see is that we don't think we got everything right. You know what I mean? We're very open and honest about the fact. If you know us intimately, like we're very open-handed about the fact that we did stuff wrong. We didn't handle every situation right. We didn't handle. Maybe we should have made a statement then. It's like we don't think we got it. We're not. We're definitely not here to say we did everything right and you guys should stop picking on us. Not at all. We believe we did some things wrong. We were definitely a 7'5", 2-year-old, right? Where we're still doing like this and but the reality is we saw the fruit of what we were doing. We saw, and you come against when you're putting tens of thousands of people in different locales, in arenas, and lifting up the name of Jesus day in and day out, you're gonna run into some opposition, and that opposition isn't gonna be light. Yep. And so I don't think, and this may be something that I don't think we were prepared for that. Because at no point at the beginning of this, no one in the room said, "Oh, I'm a pastor. We're starting a church." But to a generation of people, we were pastoring a generation of people into faith. And I think those are the things if we could go back and we could get more prepared, we would be more prepared for the fact that, hey man, like, people look at us like a church. Mm-hmm. They look at you. They're looking at these songs as their scripture for the day. Sure. They're looking at the people singing these songs and their lives as, oh, that's how I need to live my life. And just as ignorant as it can sound, and to anybody sitting, it's like, how could y'all not know that? We didn't know.
Yeah, well, I think to be fair to you guys, like I always say that Christian music, Christian media, Christian YouTube, Christian podcasting, I've always seen it as a supplement and not the sustenance. So if you're strength training, you're working out, you got protein shakes, and then you got steak and eggs and potatoes. Yeah. And steak and eggs and potato is you getting in that word for yourself, you going to church, you being in community. Absolutely. And what I do with YouTube, with music, all that, Mav worship, those are supplements, right. And I've had friends who, I had one buddy who unfortunately was working at a supplement shop, and there was a window where he didn't have any food. He couldn't afford food, but he was working at it. So he drank protein shakes for a week straight, and he had to go to the hospital and get his stomach pumped. You can't survive off of supplements. That's not what those are designed for. It's just to get you over your macro goals. And I think people approach all of this as their baseline. This is not your meat and potatoes. So I think that's fair for you to say of like, you guys are seeing us as that, but we got to keep honing in the fact that you guys are not a church.
In the colloquial sense, we're not a church.
Sure.
Right. In the colloquial sense, like in the common understanding, brick and mortar with the
local
pastor.
Church. Ecclesia,
but we are definitely a group of believers that come together.
A part of the capital C church.
Absolutely.
Yes, I love that.
And it's a lesson well learned. Like
well learned.
I think we went through that experience knowing that, man, there is gravity behind what we say, and it's important.
I want to close out this Dante section, because at one point a statement was put out.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you guys probably weren't keeping up with what was going on my end, but I came out in defense of Dante initially because the video that went viral was him on a party bus listening to Bad Bunny. Then it turned into you gonna get a demon for listening to Bad Bunny. And I was like, you guys are crazy. Like, and it was like a TikTok collage of a bunch of Christian influencers saying, like, you opening yourself up to demons. And I'm like, I don't think that's what's happening. You're not going to get a demon listening to Bad Bunny. Now, I don't listen to Bad Bunny. I can't tell you one Bad Bunny song. I can't hum you one Bad Bunny melody. I have no idea what his music sounds like, but like, y'all got to chill. And then I got into it with another Christian YouTuber. It was a big blow up. It was a big mess.
I remember.
Yeah. And beef? Long story short, as I'm defending Dante,
we came out with a statement.
A statement comes out. Yeah. Now,
you know why now?
I know. I do not think it was because of the party bus situation.
Oh, absolutely.
From my understanding, there was something inappropriate posted to his Instagram story that I did not see with my own eyes, nor did I want to. But there was something posted, and I don't know if he was high. I don't know what was going on, but there was something inappropriate and explicit posted. And then the next day, Maverick City does put out a statement and distances themselves. Okay, so walk me through that situation, because people still think it was the Bad Bunny thing, and I'm like, I'm 99% sure that it's not the Bad Bunny thing. Yeah, tell me a little bit about that and what happened, and why, even though he wasn't signed at the time, why the need to put out something.
So, and I'm gonna let JJ take it at a point right after me, but so Dante has addressed this himself, so there is no conjecture here. He's admitted to the inappropriate photo on multiple platforms. So we didn't want to be the people to put that out, because as we've stated over and over, we saw him as family, right? And this wasn't an attempt by us to throw him under the bus. It wasn't an attempt by us to even really distance ourselves from him. I think some background that will help a lot of people is that we wrote the statement in conjunction with Dante. He was fully aware. We did meeting after meeting with his team all day, all night. And that's why the statement came out so late in the day. Like, came out nearly at midnight, is because we alerted every member of our organization prior to it coming out, because this was a huge moment for us. This was the first time Maverick City would ever have made a statement about conduct, ever. In our existence. And this wasn't the first thing that happened that people had made noise about, but it was the first thing that happened that we had visible proof of that took place, to the point that admittedly I was sent what happened, right? And so there was no way around it. Multiple artists had seen it, and it was something that needed to be addressed, because whether or not we are worship pastors or whether we do pastor people, we are still Christians, and we have a platform, and we have to steward those platforms with respect, dignity, and in accordance to our beliefs. And so I wasn't there. Whether it was intentional or unintentional, it was irrelevant to us. But the thing that was important was when I'm receiving DMs from a mother that says my 8-year-old daughter XYZ, when I'm receiving, you get what I'm saying? When we're getting DMs from women, like it becomes a point that we have a responsibility to say, hey, now we don't have anything to do with this. We don't control his Instagram. We don't. And if you got the Lil Nas X thing, you got the singing on the tour bus. Now this, like as I mentioned earlier, we're not living with them. But we're seeing a continued gray area of things happen. Bro, let's have a conversation. Let's sit down. Let's agree for you to take a step back. Let's see what's really going on. Like, we made these agreements together. Now, how it ended up coming out and how it ended up transpiring isn't what we intended. We wanted this to be a walk together. We wanted this to be something we did together. We wanted to come back, coalesce, give it 6 months. Let's see what happens. Let's walk through this. Let's get some accountability together because, hey, clearly we need to pull you closer. We love you, right? And so that was our intent. And so this was in result to the inappropriate photo. That was for us proof that even if it wasn't intended, whatever the intent was, it caused people to, it could have caused someone to stumble. It could have, it was saw by people completely inappropriately. And there's consequences for even unintentional things. And that's what this was for us. It wasn't oh man, we kicking Dante out for listening to Bad Bunny. Brother, I would imagine everybody in Maverick City at some point has listened to secular music, as has most people across the landscape of the United. That's not enough. You know what I mean? But this, I can say forthrightly, no other member has posted an inappropriate photo like this to our knowledge. And if they have, we don't know about it. And so this was solely in result to the inappropriate photo. And when he says that he was still in communication with us, he was. Because we never intended to outcast him, push him away. That's not relationship. Sure. That's not what the church does. That's not what a community does. If someone is in a bit of, you pull them closer. You protect. And the silence that you have had from us is that protection, is that relationship. That's what you do to a brother. That's what you do to a friend. Mm-hmm. You don't take them at their worst at a moment of strife and pile on and say, oh, no, we ain't. That's not what you do. And people that do that, communities that do that, I don't agree with that. Yeah. You pull them closer. You walk alongside with them if they're willing. If they're not willing, you have to let them go and be and do what they want to do.
Yeah. I mean, one of the first things I know that we did was to reach out and just say, hey, man, like, we can do this together. We can help you through this process. We can put a statement together. It was a long list of things that we wanted to do together. We didn't want to throw him under the bus. We didn't want to throw him by the wayside. We wanted Dante to feel like, hey, man, yeah, there was a mistake that was made, but we're here for you. We're here to support you through that. We think that there needs to be a process of reconciliation, of healing, or whatever. Take some time away. We even offered to pay for, his staff as he took some time away, didn't do some dates with us, didn't do some other dates. Take that time away. Let's do this together and let's work on that. So I think it's important for people to know that our response wasn't, hey man, like, why did you do that? Here's an arm. But no, hey, like, we see this picture, there's clearly alarming, like, let's figure out how to walk this together with you because we've been releasing music together, we're family, but we want to do this the right way.
What was the explanation? Like, because I've never heard him address
he
it.
Said that
it
was a progress photo. It was a progress photo from him. Like he was working out. He was getting more fit. And it was a progress photo.
And he accidentally posted it.
Yeah, he says he accidentally. I mean, as he was taking, I guess he was taking it via the gram. And I guess as he took it, he says he accidentally posted. And the veracity of that I want to be clear. The veracity or non-veracity of that statement would be irrelevant to our response.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So okay, I thought he was high or something like that. So Are we talking? Was it full frontal or was it just like Carl Lentz D-Root on the beach with Justin Bieber?
That's full frontal, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's full frontal.
Okay, that's one hell of a progress photo.
Yeah.
All right. You know, the tension of being a worship collective, and sometimes you're bringing people together of different walks of life, different theological backgrounds, and then there could be, and there is often, is like a doctrinal watering down of things, right? That the fastest way for someone to get a mic in a church now is to be on a worship team, right? You don't got to be sound doctrine. You don't got to be qualified. You don't got to go teach the church. You can sing. They'll throw you on a stage, and you could be in front of people probably before your brain is able to like handle that. And a lot of time, I think this is my theory. Total side note. I don't think our brains can distinguish being in front of a crowd because they're there to see me, and being in front of a crowd because they're there to worship Jesus, and Maverick City is just a conduit to that. Like, I don't think the brain can decipher the difference.
I agree.
So now we have a generation that's becoming worship leaders. Oftentimes they're not really there yet, right? And sometimes you have views that are just flat out outside of orthodoxy in terms of historical Christianity, affirming of certain lifestyles that are outside of God's design, so on and so forth. So my conversation with Dante privately, and some things I said publicly, was his new team or whoever was managing his new thing did an event in Dallas, and his new pastor came out as full on like, yay, same-sex couples, the church has been bad, you know, and it was just like, whoa, now we're coloring way outside of anything that has looked as historical Christianity. And so how do you guys deal with that, or do you guys not deal with that? Is that not a conversation? What does that look like? Because that is something that will come up, is now an open affirmation of this dude's pastor, manager, team of same-sex lifestyle, right?
I mean,
That was well after he had.
Yeah, this is after.
Yeah.
It's about 6 months to 9 months after, yeah.
I mean, at that point, we had no working relationship. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'd say this. I don't know that the church that guy had is no longer open.
Yeah, Amen Church, I think it was.
It's a dual catch-22 of this. We're a label, right? So we have assigned to our label right now probably 30 to 35 artists. So if you're asking me if X artist signed the Tribal's, pastor came out doing this, what would I do? I mean, I have a contractual obligation to that artist that I would, whatever the terms of distributing it would be. Now, if that artist was in Maverick City, we have a little bit more responsibility. In sense, it's kind of like it's like there's, any other Christian label, like Capital Christian Music Group, like what are you guys going to do if someone, there's still that's business to me.
From a legal standpoint, and from a, I've been around, and I've done a lot of deals in a lot of buildings, and many of, if not all of the Christian labels and gospel labels will include a morality clause, right? That gives them the authority and the ability to say, you did something that we have decided is damaging. They don't spell out, definitely don't refer to the Bible. They do not spell out what those things are. It just gives a unilateral, if you do something that causes ridicule or harm or irreparable injury to the brand, we have the authority to end this relationship. And what I realized as I was sitting here listening was like, I've actually never seen that exercise, but I have seen a lot of worship leaders say I was dealing with alcoholism. I have seen a lot of them come out and say I was in an adulterous relationship, and the labels keep on keeping on.
Whoa.
Except one instance that I can think of where there was a label 8 years ago or so who did publicly sever ties with their artist. And I say publicly because on the back end, they maintained ownership of their publishing catalog and still to this day collects money on it and pays him out. But publicly, the statement was issued, we're done. And so what I realized is, there are, and we talked earlier about, kind of being the top and, the target being on you for being the top. I think right now there's always a lot of attention paid to this dominant force in the worship space, Maverick City, and the inclination, whether it's mainstream worship music, gospel, Christian, is to take down number one, find fault with number one. Surely they can't be that great. And when the humanity starts to show, and we've seen it with worship collectives across the globe, quite literally, what was hot last year is now being condemned this year, but people are still making money off of those things. We're not letting go of the money. We're just publicly not acknowledging or celebrating. And I think it's interesting because I think it's a great idea, but it doesn't actually ever happen.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that that's right. I'm just saying, I think everybody, if we started to pick apart and decide who we were going to sit down, most of your favorite worship bands wouldn't have leaders.
Really? All right. So I guess my question would be, like, when you're at Capitol, you're running Maverick City, Tribl. Like, where is that line? Like, where is that line? Did someone stop going to church for 2 years? Are we going to let them keep leading worship?
You would never know.
Someone out here running through women after shows and Christian women to come in, and all of a sudden they're hooking up. Like, where do you guys just draw that line to be like, hey, this person is dangerous with the platform that we're enabling them to have? Like, where would you guys draw that line?
I go back to what I said. It's this, like, because of the day and age we live in, no one can stop anyone from releasing music regardless. You couldn't stop them if you wanted to. I think the secondary point is it depends on relationship. If I have a relationship, like I have a relationship with JJ, if JJ became wayward and started to just live any kind of way, my relationship with him he would still be my best friend, and I would do everything I can to bring my brother back to where he was, the same as he does for me. Sure. And so I think that the question you're asking is, would I still allow him to produce music? I'd probably say, hey, bro, maybe you should chill out on producing music. I don't know that I would do a public statement against JJ, but I probably would say, because I think that's the hard part for us, is a lot of relationships we have are very personal. They're beyond, many of them in the beginning were beyond business. And the two can be, just because I'm not in the city with you and I don't know if these things, if I'm hearing enough of it, we're still having the conversations, right? Like, we're not just getting information and like, oh, well, I don't know. Like, that has nothing to do with me, right? But right now we have we've signed probably 12 artists in the past 2 weeks, right? Do I know if any of them actually go to church? I mean, I can't prove it. I would hope so. I would imagine so. And I think that one of the things for us that's that we have to recognize is we're so front-facing. Like, most people don't know who runs CCMG or Provident or Centricity, these other labels. So there's no mandate on them to hold responsible their artists. One of the labels I just mentioned, they had an artist that actually came out and said, she was like, I don't know if being gay is a sin or not.
Yeah.
So they're definitely not dropping that artist. I can guarantee you that. And I could go as far as say with no other label in the entire space dropper for saying that. And so, I think the question that you're asking is a great question. And it's a question of conviction. Like, as a professional, how far do you extend your faith into what you do as a job? And I think if you asked any American, would you quit your job because something that you saw was immoral? I think that the overwhelming response would be no.
But I'd actually be curious to know your thoughts on it from the standpoint of being outside of it. And I think about public statements, for example. The problem with public statements often is that the public is also irresponsible. So it's not like we're speaking to an arbiter who is neutral or mature or responsible. The public square is difficult, and it's not balanced, and it's not always fair, equitable, full of grace, fruits of the Spirit. Like, it's not the very things that they're condemning others for being. And so it's kind of like, be accountable to you, because you are at the same website. so you want me to disclose to you that this person was here, but your husband or your daughter, and so it's kind of this question of to whom should we, one another, be accountable? I think definitely to our pastors and leadership, definitely to our friends that we're in community with who are sound spiritual voices in our lives. But from a business standpoint, as we are a startup still, like, what is it? Like, what, when I say we put together code of conduct, like, because we realize, oh man, we need to address this. I think we're open to addressing this in a way that is different from the way that we're considering it.
Absolutely.
Provided that somebody says what you ought to do is, but no one has said that.
I would say that there's a difference between a job and someone behind the scenes versus someone that's the face of something, right? So in my situation, I have new Christians, non-Christians that work for me. My mixing engineer is a Palestinian Muslim. That creates some interesting conversations around Israel. You know what I'm saying? So I feel the tension that you guys are talking about. The only thing from my personal experience is when I was in a situation in 2016, a dear friend of mine was working with me, and we've since reconciled, but we did a deal with Interscope for him, and within a couple months, you give someone young an outlandish amount of money, they start to drift, they start to, exhibit behaviors that are incongruent with their Christian lifestyle. So I was working with the label of like, hey, like, we got to get you healthy, bro. Like, you out here doing X, Y, and Z, violating our code of conduct. But Interscope is like, we signed a Christian. Like, we signed a Christian. Right? Like, because they're looking at Lecrae and what they're doing, and like, oh, y'all could be the and then they're trying to help. He doesn't want to get the help, and so we just decided to part ways because I couldn't be yoked up to someone that was living wild, and that was hard. That costed me a lot, like financially, relationally, families overlap, and again, by the grace of God, we're reconciled now, we're good. But that was really, really, really difficult, and that wasn't. And so I hear you as like the label, like the secular, the pagans were like, hey, like, whatever you need, you want to go to a retreat, a rehab, whatever, get away, and we just couldn't make it work, and so like I had to back away at the expense of, losing money over that situation, and it was hard. So I hear you. I just think when someone's the face of something, I couldn't, in good conscience, I couldn't stand behind somebody that I knew wasn't walking with Jesus, not going to church, and doing things that, it's not that he's just not going to church, not walking with Jesus. He's doing things that are counter to the gospel. Yeah. And I was like, I can't. I tried for 6 months. I'm out. And it sucked, I
think, for Maverick's responsibility at that time, I think we had made the statement. We weren't reconciled at that particular time. He was kind of off doing his thing. I think we're always trying to figure out, like, what's appropriate, what's heaping on, what's adding insult to injury, right? And so I think in that sense, I was like, man, from what I know personally of how all this stuff played out, how Dante feels, how I feel, there was a lot of hurt. There was a lot of, there's a lot of things that we ended up working through and reconciling.
In terms of your guys' relationship.
Absolutely. But I think in that situation, his pastor made a statement. Again, he didn't make that statement. I don't know what he personally believes about what his pastor said. And so I think that for us felt like, we didn't really know how to navigate those waters. And honestly, I think anything that we would have said would have just added more fuel to the fire that I think wouldn't have been helpful for.
Yeah, it was already removed at that point. No, that's fair. Another critique that I kind of heard about you guys a lot is like the blending of gospel, sacred music within secular spaces, and not neutral, because there's a new wave of secular, right? There's the Connor Prices and the Jakes and these guys that are, I would say, more or less neutral or even net positive. Like, I think Jake's net positive. I think Connor Price is net positive. But some of the collaborations you guys have done at one of the award shows was with Quavo, right? And that caused a big stir of like, how can they stand behind Quavo, who, yes, granted, is doing this tribute, which was a beautiful tribute, and I thought you guys executed it with class and all that. But at the same time, like, the lion's share of the Migos catalog has been the antithesis of what Maverick represents.
Yep.
And how do you guys wrestle through those sort of decisions? Because again, now we're so again to backtrack, the lens that people are looking at it, big it's bad, right? You got loose theology. The fastest way to get a platform in the church is to be a worship leader, and they're filtering this, the Dante situation, and now they're on stage with one of the Migos, you know, Bad and Bougie, you know, like what, like how do you guys wrestle through that? And was that backlash warranted? Was it not warranted? Like what did you guys make of that?
Yeah, I mean, we start here. We start with purpose. We start with calling. We start with what we feel like. I mean, what we're called to do by the Lord. And I'll say this, I think the Maverick cities of the world are set up intentionally and purposely, I believe, by God to invade and be a part of spaces that most other worship organizations, churches, just would never venture.
Sure.
So I think uniquely we're positioned in a place that kind of, it kind of moves the conversation a little further than where it maybe traditionally has been. So I start there. I think the second thing I'd say, and this is, I'm really glad you brought this. We were just talking about this. I actually had a dream about us doing Quavo's funeral before Takeoff's funeral, before they asked us to do the performance at the Grammys. So had this dream in January. It was a very vivid dream. And we were in Atlanta at State Farm Arena, and Maverick City was performing at Takeoff's funeral. That was the dream that I had.
This is prior?
This is prior to them asking. So this is a crazy, just a crazy moment.
But this is after he.
This is
passed
after
away
he's died.
tragically.
After he's died, he's passed away.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, and I told Norman this like the day after. I was like, dude, I had this really weird dream. I don't know what it means, but maybe just pray on it and see what you think. 2 weeks after I tell him about this dream, the Grammys call and say, hey, you know, we were thinking, we do this tribute every year to artists who have passed away, and we want to do it this year, but we want you guys to do it, but we kind of want to highlight Takeoff. Would you guys like? It was an immediate yes, because it felt like it was connected to vision, to purpose, to calling. And so I think one of the things that you're asking is like, how do we wrestle with those things? It's like, well, we do what we feel like we do what we feel like the Lord's calling us to, right? So that wasn't a clout decision. That wasn't trying to build hype. That wasn't like, oh man, we'll be at the Grammys. Like, it was none of that. It was, oh my gosh, absolutely. Little did we know, and I'll say this just so you know, little did we know that week we were literally ministers of the gospel. I mean, the emotion, the pain, the grief from every single rehearsal, even to the moment that we went up on the stage, it was like, and I'm not over exaggerating, like each time we got together to rehearse, even almost before we went on the stage, it was like, I don't know if I can do this, breakdown crying. Like, it was that palpable. And so that whole week it was like, hey, let's just pray real quick. Can we pray? I don't know how many times we did that. I don't know how many times we got to be a voice of encouragement. I don't know. I mean, so I know from my chair and from my decision making and from my perspective, like, we were supposed to do that. I don't know how someone else on the outside of that decision sees that and feels about that, but that is, when I sit in this chair and I make a decision and I stand before God one day and say, accountable for all the decisions we made, that's one that I know we were supposed to do.
Absolutely.
And I think for us, I think one of the reasons why we even do this podcast is we kind of want to recenter the narrative around the Maverick City, because there are things that we do that are connected to purpose and the calling that people have said is clout chasing and, trying to build the hype and whatever. And I think people knowing and hearing like, no, this is actually like, there was a purpose, there was a reason, there was specific whatever connected to that decision and us doing that we actually got to be a part of and see the fruit of, I think is really helpful for people to know. And you don't know, like, and that's the thing that I love to say about that situation. It's like, I don't know what seeds were planted, but seeds were planted. And I don't know what harvest will come of it, but I know there will be a harvest.
Do you feel like there was a clear declaration of the gospel to Quavo throughout those interactions?
Yes.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah.
I don't mean a word of encouragement, because I think
No.
you guys were absolutely there to encourage, and I think that was a huge blessing. But there's a
for sure.
grace and a truth that has to come of like, you guys were gracious, merciful, loving, encouraging.
For sure.
But that brother also needs to know the truth that like, you cannot continue putting this out into the world and assuming that it's without consequence.
I think there's a both end. I think there's a both end. I think that's for some people.
What's for some people?
What you're saying. I truthfully believe, for instance, the woman with the issue of blood, all she had to do was grab the hem of Jesus' garment and she was healed. He didn't have to lay hands. She drew virtue from him. Why I'm definitely not paralleling us to Jesus. I'm simply saying sometimes your presence is what's necessary.
Proximity.
Your presence, the way you live life, the way you exude life, the way they say you interact with your friends, the way they say you talk on the phone, the way they see you in relationship with others is what is necessary in a moment to draw someone to desire more relationship with Christ. And I think that we can get caught up in thinking we're more needed in moments than we actually are.
Sure, that's fair.
That's it. You know what I mean? Like, you can get caught up in believing, if I don't say this right now, no, brother. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless there's moments where that's so. But there's moments when that's not so. And I do believe relationship is super important. I'm not using that as some scapegoat. I do believe relationship is extremely important because that's what leads to life transformation. That's how my life was transformed.
Yeah, I mean, doing life with somebody is going to be obviously more important than trying to give them some sort of formulaic Romans Road depiction of the gospel. I'm saying it's and both. I'm saying we tell them about Jesus and we do life with them.
I'll say this, and what we're talking about really is like the role of a relationship in helping people understand and see the truth. I think the Holy Spirit does that work. I think we persist in that. I think by being obedient. This is a cool example that I'd love to share. There's an artist who we have a collaboration coming out with really soon. And I had sent him a song. I was like, hey man, I don't really know you, but I feel like if we did the song together, it would be amazing. It was explicitly Jesus, it was very clearly like, this is a Christian song. He writes me back and says, hey man, this really isn't me. This isn't on brand, and I don't know that I feel comfortable saying that. Are you okay with that? And I was like, well, let's see if we can find another song. So we ended up finding another song, talking through it. The song that we ended up doing was kind of centered around this idea of needing help and asking, crying out for help. And he calls me and he says, hey man, I feel like I need to tell you this. Like, I haven't told anybody other than my wife this, and I want to tell you this. Like, I feel the Lord calling me back to him. I just started reading my Bible recently. I'm on a journey, and I feel like us doing the song together is the right thing to do for more than just putting the song out. So for me, it's like, whereas like if I was in that mode of, man, you know what, you don't want to do the song that says Jesus, nah, bro, we're not doing a collaboration. Relationship won out. Now we're on FaceTime talking about Jesus, man.
Is it the artist that I think it is?
I think it is the artist you think it is.
God's moving, man.
God is moving, and he's saying that to me. He mentioned a few other examples, but it's just like, bro, you don't. And it's really cool. It's like he has done some collaborations with some other artists, and one of the things he kept highlighting was like, man, I feel like this happened and that happened, and what he's basically saying is, those people planted seeds. And now those seeds are becoming a harvest.
Yeah.
Now, I may be a part of his harvest moment, but those other artists that were just there and doing the ministry, they were a part of the,
fire.
You know what I'm saying? And so I think for us, what we can't get lost in is like, well, did we make the proclamation? Yes, that's important. I'm not downplaying that. But I know in that moment when we did the Grammy thing with Quavo, I know in that moment, like, we did exactly what the Lord wanted us to do.
Yeah,
so
fair enough.
That's hard for people to understand. And there's nuance in that. That's more of a conversation. One of the reasons why I'm really glad we're doing this. But I just think, man, and as people even are interacting with this, that's where we're called. We're called to the places that other people maybe wouldn't necessarily venture because things like that happen more than we would even.
Yeah, and
You know what I'm saying?
And I would add, I think there's a distinction between doing a memorial tribute to someone and like Mavericks on a song with Migos. You know what I mean? Like there's a distinction there, and I would hope that people are smart enough to know the difference.
We certainly are.
You know?
Certainly are.
Let's talk about this Will Smith thing. That's the last thing that got y'all in hot water.
Oh,
Okay.
Let's talk about it.
Let's do that.
I remember seeing it, and I remember thinking, this is my honest thoughts was.
EJ.
This isn't really a Christian song. You know what I mean? Like my thought was like, this isn't really a Christian song per se, but if this becomes the catalyst for him to come back to Jesus, I'm all for it. You know, and could this be that?
I just want to say this on the front end.
I was gonna say,
Maverick City Music was in no way, shape, form involved in a BET tribute with Will Smith.
I think that's the thing that really needs to be said. Maverick City had nothing to do with Will Smith.
And this-
Y'all just mad. Like
this
it had nothing to do with
hold
it.
on.
No.
Nothing to
But
do.
I want to say this. This is where a lot of these lines get blurred. Chandler Moore,
A solo artist.
a solo artist,
Sang.
who was releasing a solo album, who was in the middle of his campaign, performed with Will Smith, right? But no one knows that. I mean, that's Maverick City up there, right? And so I think for us, like, the reason that we say it tongue in cheek, but that's sort of some of the.
It's not tongue in cheek. It's reality.
Well, no,
It's
I mean the
like-
way. Yeah. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
when people see Chandler Moore and a bunch of black people singing in a choir, you think it's Mav City.
Yeah.
No one on that stage is a member of Maverick City except Chandler Moore, and he was there as a solo artist, period. Maverick City was never there. All the anger about TikTok, Maverick City was never there. They weren't there. So all the dreams that God gave you about Mav City on BET, it's never happened. Maverick City was never there. So either you a lie or God's a lie. But Maverick City was never at the BET Awards.
So that was Chandler on the
And
song.
Sunday
Chandler
service.
Moore, never Maverick
It was
City.
Sunday service
Never
choir.
Maverick City.
Oh, it was Ye's choir.
It was
Kanye
Ye's
West
choir.
choir,
Ye's
Sunday
choir.
service. It was never Maverick City. They were not there. They're not on the song. They're not on the track. You've never heard them. So if the Holy Spirit told you that they were,
So
somebody lied.
does that get cleared through Tribl?
Had nothing to
He's
do
a
with
solo
it.
artist.
But isn't he as a solo artist signed to Tribl?
Yeah, he is. I mean, this is the thing. Because it's a performance, there was nothing for us to clear. He can go sing live. It's like you asking me, can Chandler go sing live in a bar right now? What can I do? You know what I mean? If he's willing to go, he can go. I mean, if they want to release the version that he sang on, then we have some involvement. But he's not on the actual song.
Oh, okay.
Friday's on the actual song. Yeah, so we don't.
Y'all had nothing to do with that.
Nothing. Now, I will say this. I think that what they were seeing, honestly, was something that they've contended with over the years. Me being, 4 months into the company, was like, I don't see that pain point. I don't see that pain point. Why would people think Maverick City's there if they say, here's Will Smith featuring Chandler Moore and Sunday Service Choir? Why would people walk away and say Maverick
We also
City?
knew that like there was nobody that was going to be able to come back behind it and say, "Hey, just for everybody who's wondering, here's clarity." And so like that's kind of that goes into decision making of like, man, it's not even worth like the confusion around.
Because that's also kind of messy too, right? Like if y'all then come out with another statement and go, technically, this was not Maverick City. This was
And we're
Nah,
in the middle of a tour at that moment.
yeah.
We did the Africa tour and stuff's popping off.
What I will say is this, and this is so EJ can feel. What I will say is this: my understanding is that Will Smith is not a Scientologist. I don't know how true that is or not true. That's my understanding from what I've been told. And also, the song was about, to me, although it may not be a Christian song, it's an inspirational song that points to God to me. When I listen to the song, it's pointing to a walk through trials and tribulations and God being the only way to get out of it. And that, to me, in and of itself, is on brand to what we do. The imagery in and of itself, that's immaturity to me. The comments that it looks demonic, fire, do you not cook? And I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to be funny. Does your stove, no, I'm not trying, is your stove a demonic seance. I
But
mean,
let
it's
me-
literal.
let-
I want
okay, go
to.
ahead, go ahead.
Let him cook, let him cook.
I want to get through this one.
I know,
Is
go
it
ahead.
is it red? We don't wear red in it. So a red in a circle. So a basketball or a red in a circle. So you're not gonna watch the Kansas City Chiefs tomorrow. Like it's like, where does it? When the Kansas City Chiefs walk out, they could probably have pyro walking when they run out. So you're not a fan of the Kansas City Chiefs anymore. It's what are you saying to me? Like what are we really? You know, they parallel the Holy Spirit to fire. You know what I mean? Like it's so, and that's in the like there becomes a point where people are looking. They have confirmation bias. It's Maverick City. It's fire and it's red. It's demonic. Oh my God, they were up there singing about how God's going to get them through trials and tribulations. This is a demonic saying. They're literally trying to pull us to the devil. So
I warned you about
I warned you about those people that said, Jireh, you are enough. I warned you about those people that said, Christ is my firm. Like, what are you warning people again? We don't have any content.
Yeah.
We have no content whatsoever that is in opposition to the gospel. If you can show me content that Maverick City music released that is in opposition to the gospel, I will shut down our label. I will shut down our music organization, and we will walk away from. That does not exist. There's no place, there's no time where we have ever released anything that was in opposition to the gospel at any point in time. And I think that we as a capital C church do a disservice to our own by people coming to comment sections, seeing us arguing over trivial matters when there are lives at stake. You're literally diminishing the witness of someone attempting to do exactly what you are attempting to do because of a preference, because you don't like the color red and fire. That doesn't make something demonic. Demons make something demonic. Sin makes something demonic. Not colors and elements that God created. Like that. This really gets me fired up. It's because we try our hardest. We try our best. We aren't perfect. We do everything in our power to draw people to the cross. We don't put out music. We don't put out content. We don't put out even nothing where anyone is supporting something that is sinful. You know, as far as, I mean, it gets so bad. You're talking about a girl wearing a shirt that is an inch above her belly button, singing about how she's standing still with Christ. Like, it's gotten so bad. And I saw y'all talk about this on it's gotten so bad. It's like, how do we as Christians have constructive criticism with responsibility? Mm-hmm. How do we as Christians have righteous judgment, righteous fervor, righteous indignation, but do it in a way of grace and in truth, where you don't push people away from the very witness that these people that are trying to do the same thing you are drawing people to? Yeah. It's like, man, I think we're going to find ourselves that you have discredited everybody, and to the point to where who's going to draw people? And that's the thing. I don't fear it because I know God is good. God always wins out when he's going to use the people that are doing what he's asking them to do. And I don't care about the platform remaining the same. I care about, like, why is it the first thing you're looking to do is find criticism to someone whose witness is clearly for God? Yeah. It's, you know, if you could come to me and say, hey, man, like, I'm cool. Are all Maverick songs perfectly theologically sound? Probably not. I'm not a pastor of divinity. Maybe not. But are they geared toward the very thing they should be geared towards every single time? Absolutely. Like, there's enough heretics and people preaching something false.
There's actual false.
Yeah, there's actual false teachers. There's actual people doing demonic that you can really make sure people stay away from. We're not one of those people.
Yeah.
We on your side.
Yeah. I'll say,
Sorry.
that's yes. I was at the BET Awards. I was at rehearsals. I was involved in a lot of that performance, a whole lot of that performance. And when I say it never occurred to me that someone would take issue with that, it never occurred to me. I saw it multiple times. I sat through multiple rehearsals, and I thought, wow, that's really great. got home, opened Instagram and TikTok and said, oh, what? Because I know from rehearsals, but then also from listening to the lyrics of the song, Job 23:10, but he knows the way that I take. After he's tried me in fire, I will come out as pure gold. He literally quotes it at the end of the performance. He said, the way of the cross, though everyone has a cross to bear. When you come out of it, you can hold your head up. He's talking about, the song is called You Can Make It. The first verse, fire is going around him. He's talking about going through the valley of the shadow of death. Lots of pain, lots of trial. The second verse, he's talking about the extinguishing of that fire. There's rain. The fire is over. The third verse, the end of the song, everyone walks to the front, heads raised high, triumphant, and refined. Period. Clear as day. I saw the treatment. I saw the stage. I saw the fire. First verse, I'm being refined. This is horrible. I don't like it. Second verse, that's finally gone. It's raining on me. I'm soaking wet. End of it, the entire group is victorious. That's Bible. That's Job. That's the way of every believer. How people could look at that and see something different says more to me about them than it does about what he said. And that's even without sitting at rehearsals with Will, where he's talking about, I'm learning that everyone has a cross to bear. I'm learning that, man, no one escapes the way of the cross. That's more Bible than I hear in a lot of churches right now. So I don't know. All I know is Journey. All I know is open the lyrics. They're on Spotify. Read it. I could quote them. It's how he ends the song. It's how every verse is about, man, I feel like I've been persecuted. I've been beat down. What is this feeling I'm feeling? By the way, that's exactly what Job said for the entire book of the Bible. I don't understand. It incenses me partly because I resonate with the story of Job, which is probably why I like the song, but also why I like the staging. But it is this outright refusal to look at scripture and look at lyrics and actually research what's happening, and this insatiable itching to just be upset. And then to call it righteous indignation. How dare you? Like, it's not righteous. What's righteous is a broken vessel getting on a national platform where he could have done getting jiggy with it and could have done nudity and could have done scantily clad, and instead he quoted scripture. Stop, because there are people going to hell because they haven't met the Jesus that you're so mad that he didn't talk about when you didn't take the opportunity to talk about him yourself. You were too busy in the comment section. Yeah. Get a witness. Like, what are we talking about?
That's great.
That's crazy to me. It was so, like, and then these guys know because we were on calls and they're like, people mad. And I'm like, about Job? They're mad about Job? Now we go to an art gallery, right? And we see the Sistine Chapel and we say, wow, God is great. We don't call that secular. We allow painters to paint about things. Dante's Inferno, 7 realms of hell, and we don't call that demonic. We don't boycott that. We haven't taken it out of textbooks. We'll go to the museum and look at it and say, wow, what a great painter. But when Will Smith does art on a stage, now it's demonic. Make it make sense. It's double-minded and it's biased. And I think at the end of the day, what I really want is for people to just acknowledge the bias. You mad at Mav City. You're mad. And everything that you see about Mav City is through your lens of frustration. If you will at least own that, then we can have the conversation about what do you think Mav is doing wrong. But you have to at least own you're personally bitter about something. What is it? Is it about the shift in power dynamic? Is it that you didn't get put on solo on the mic? Is it that you felt like you were passed up? Like, why are you personally mad at Mav City? Such that you would see everything through the lens of your offense. Because until I think the body of Christ is willing to acknowledge you're offended and you have to lay that down and, by the way, repent. Now let's have a conversation about what we did to offend you. Mm-hmm. And we can give you context. And at the end of that context, then we can agree to disagree, or maybe I'll enlighten you, or maybe you'll enlighten me. Mm-hmm. But until you can come honestly and say, I don't like y'all because, then what are we really talking about?
That's
good.
It's good.
Those are just my opinions on it.
No,
but read Job.
I think that's fair. I think we talked about the presuppositions people have against Christians who are successful. Mm-hmm. We talked about some of the areas you guys could have done better. You guys are building an airplane as you fly it, and you guys owning some of that. as we begin to wrap, like, what do you guys think? I'd love to hear from all y'all. What do y'all think the biggest misconception about Maverick City is?
Jesus Christ. The misconception about Maverick City is that people are judging us based on what they would do if they were us. And what America as a whole doesn't have a great representation of what a successful black person looks like. So just give me a second here. When you said, and you said it brilliantly, you said it honestly, you said it authentically. You said, yep, the flashy dudes on Instagram, right? I don't really see us as that flashy because I know people of my same level of affluence that are far more flashy than me. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to have some diamond necklaces instead of a big house on a golf course. I don't value a house on a golf course. I don't have a boat, but I know a guy in our industry who has a 102-foot yacht, but he don't wear that much jewelry. It's because culturally, how we spend our money and how we exhibit wealth and what we take interest in is different than most people that have affluence in this sphere. So there are a few things about us that are just off-putting for the simple fact of, hey, man, I don't know anybody that's saved that, walks around with that much jewelry on or Rolex or, Craig Rochelle wears regular shoes, But, I mean, hey, you ever seen his lake house? You know what I mean? Like, there is an understanding of a way to be wealthy and to be Christian. Mm-hmm. That is one of the huge misconceptions of Maverick City, that we look like a certain thing to Christians because they don't really have an alternative parallel as executives, right? So as a black executive in Christian music, you don't really have an idea of one, especially one that has crossed over and is now permeating a space that was all white, and I'm not making this a race thing. To me, it's just a cultural difference. Mm-hmm. It's a cultural preferential difference because the simple fact, hey, it's America. Yep. Most people most black people haven't sat down and had dinner with a white person at their house, and vice versa. And so when you get down to how that permeates Maverick City, it's pretty much at its core that people saw us as money hungry after doing this for the fame, doing this for the fortune, doing this for doing this for any reason other than to spread the gospel. Right? Like, they aren't in this for anything. They're in this for the money. They're in this for, my man, we have a nonprofit called the God Problems Fund where we give away far more than 10% of the money that we make a year. And that's just not stuff. We have been big on not pushing forward the things that we do. And that was for various reasons. We didn't want to take the shine off of what God was doing. We wanted that to let that be enough. And that it just got to a point that we felt, if we don't tell people the truth, it'll never be known. Amen. So,
can I give a little context? So just something to think about. I think you're totally right in that I know quite a few folks in the business entrepreneur space, mm-hmm. and all of them got Rolexes and jewelry, right? And they're Christians and they love Jesus. I think that what makes it sometimes different is that when it's so connected to something that is ministry, mm-hmm. that people have trouble deciphering that. Mm-hmm. And so it just looks like my man Ryan Panetta, he got the illest watch collection. The dude's doing $20 million a year. And he does some Christian stuff too, but he's a real estate mogul, right? People don't look at him the same as they look at you because it's so intertwined with the ministry aspect. Yeah. People look at me, and I'm not saying I'm anywhere near what you guys have been able to accomplish, but in a similar light. Oh, it's so intertwined with ministry. Mm-hmm. And so the folks in some of my circles, we've just been like, look, we're not posting our cars. We're not you see me in some nice shoes and that's it. You don't know where I live. You don't know what my house looks like. You don't know because it just creates an unnecessary like questioning of motives.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing someone's heart. It's again, especially when they don't have this context of y'all.
Absolutely.
You know, so this is why I'm saying like I'm giving it to you guys like kudos.
Yeah,
like
I
you guys
love
are
it.
taking the narrative back.
Yeah.
But that is one of those variables that I think is missing. You know what I mean? Is that the context of this may give people a different perspective, similar to my guy Ryan Pineda, who's
Yep.
you know.
I mean, the reality, and I said, JJ, you know, me and JJ talk about this all the time. And I said, brother, that at some point we have to normalize what diverse wealth looks like in different communities. This is simply, I grew up in the Deep South. I grew up in the country. This is what I saw. I don't know. I mean, I could attempt to learn, to appease, to assimilate to something that may be more comfortable to someone else. But I didn't grow up around wealthy church people. So when, you know, I'm a businessman. Yes, I'm a businessman. I was a marketing CEO, millionaire before I was ever involved in anything that had any. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I do want to give you props though, because I do feel like what you guys, now this is the flip side, is there is a need for young men to see the aspirational.
Yeah.
Right? And so if they don't got you guys, and I just don't want to deal with the hassle of showing what car I drive. I don't want to deal with that.
I think you have that, and I'm not going to cut you. I think you have that. You have that option as a white man in the United States of America. They have enough other examples, young white boy. They have enough other examples that they can aspire to. That can show them ways of living and inspire that are safe.
Yes.
If I were to ask anyone to name 10 African American or diverse entrepreneurs that don't play sports, there's nothing wrong with playing sports, that don't sing, that don't rap, that are not actors. And give me 10 of those as examples to young black men today that don't live illegal lives or lives of all of us would struggle.
Yeah, so I say that to say that there I do think that there could be a good aspect about it, even though it's going to come with backlash, is that there's an aspirational element of a black man who's an entrepreneur, successful, and young men particularly, they need to see that. They need to see that and to have something to aspire for. But you are opening yourself up to the Christian community, and that's you got to weigh the scales on that. You know what I mean?
And I mean, my comment to JJ was that I believe that if there's a kid, for those that are offended, for the kid that sees one of us and says, "Hey man, how did you get that car?" And I tell, "Hey man, I'm a Christian music executive. Well, what's the name of the group? Maverick City Music." And they go and they listen to that music. All they're going to hear is the gospel.
Amen.
Which happens all the time.
Which happens
all
to
the
me
time. People,
on the daily.
People are like, what car? What do you do for a living?
You're not selling a BS coaching
No.
course. Praise
No,
God.
I'm not
Right?
selling-
'Cause that's what they see out there. Like, okay, where's the funnel? You know?
Someone asked me the other day, like, well, what do I have to do to get a car like this? Like, dude, I make Jesus music, man. I make Christian music. They're like, that's so dope. Like, you know, invite them to the show, invite them to hang out. So I mean, it's just like.
And there will be just a segment of people that don't feel like Christians should have anything nice. And that's like those we can't even, you know what I'm saying? We can't even try to persuade those people. But yeah, that's good. That's a great point. Misconceptions about what you guys do.
That this is about anything other than Jesus. Yeah. I think that's the biggest misconception that I wanted to dispel. That's why we're here. That's why I'm here, at least. I just want people to know that this is connected to purpose, and the purpose is spreading the gospel. If, you know, at the end of my life, is, you know, we talked about this earlier, standing before the Lord, I want to give an account that I used all of the resources, all of the energy, all of the platforms to make him famous and to point people towards him. And so I think giving us space to talk about some of the decisions we've made, to talk about some of the way we even think about why we do certain things, helps people to understand that, man, this is not about anything other than Jesus. Yeah.
That's fire.
Misconception. I mean, I think I echo a lot of what's been said already, but I think a common one is that Maverick City, this entire movement, should be held to the same standard as people have seen in the industry to date, because I think Maverick City has proven itself to be an anomaly And that doesn't mean that you throw the standard out. It just means that maybe the standard wasn't actually the standard. Maybe as finitely as we as an industry were thinking about what was possible, we also limited what should exist, how it should look, who should do it, what form it should take. And we evolve as, and I'm not saying evolve without restraint. I'm just saying we grow and expand in our understanding of what's possible when we see things.
That's good. I feel like I hijacked y'all whole podcast. Yeah.
No, not at all.
What's the point?
Y'all got any questions for me before we wrap? Because I do want to pray for you guys before we get out of here.
This is the point. I think what we would want. I mean, this has been a great conversation. We appreciate you for being here, being our first collaboration. From this conversation, from getting to the nitty gritty, I think what has changed. What, in your viewpoint, about Maverick coming in has changed?
It's nice to put faces to the people behind the scenes. And not just faces, but like people, humans with, stories. Yeah, humanizing.
Someone
you
says
guys.
something about Maverick City next time, you're like, oh, man, I know Norm. I know
Yeah.
JJ. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I can't
because
see that.
it's tough I think, for people to see something so big and then not understand, like, that God can, like, just breathe on something.
Sure.
So I think your guys' journey and understanding the business side, understanding how you guys have, how generous you guys have been, which again is very unprecedented. Not just in secular music and Christian music. Sometimes Christian music is worse, and I've seen some of these deal memos. So I think that's been really dope, is to see, to kind of get to know you guys and see your hearts and meet your wife and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Go ahead.
What are we missing? Like what?
Honestly, I think this, and then bringing your own artist on to share more of their story and owning your own narrative. I think that would go a long way. I think one of the things that I've talked to Mike Signorelli about, that pastor, and one of the things we internally talk about is not viewing critics as opposition, but viewing them as people who are attempting to be good Bereans. And that's something that I pray for my heart a lot, is like these are not folks, they think they're doing the right thing, just in the wrong way.
That's good.
And we have to do so much detangling of their presuppositions. That's why I'm railing so heavy on Christian nihilism right now, because we have to detangle the presupposition that big is bad.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That successful is Satan, and that's the hard work, man. Because now we're really trying to change people's. We're trying to be gentle as doves and as shrewd as snakes to people who already are hostile towards you and are going to write you off just because you guys are successful. Then add the fact that y'all are black entrepreneurs. Then add the fact, you know what I mean? Like, it's like having a gentle posture for those folks is hard.
Yeah.
Is hard. Word. You guys ready to pray?
Let's pray.
Please.
All right. Father God, I thank you so much for this conversation. I thank you for these three men, and I think of the verse that a cord of three strands cannot be broken. And I thank you for the synergy that they have within their friendships. I thank you for all the people behind the scenes. I thank you for all the families represented here. I thank you for everyone that's watched this conversation and heard the goodness about you and your cross and your redemptive work and the restoration. And I pray for your presence to be known in their lives in even more manifold ways, Lord, that it would go deeper than they could imagine, and that ultimately, Lord, that the best is yet to come, Lord, that they're exemplifying what it means to be faithful with their time, talent, and treasure, to occupy this space until you return, and to bring all the glory to you, Lord. I thank you, Lord. I pray these things in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
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 Thank you, bro.
Thanks, guys. This was great.